Hi everyone and welcome to This Is Why We Fight. It's another episode of Tuesday Tyranny and I'm Jo.
And I'm Jordan.
Hello! Okay, that was probably a bit cheerful considering the subject we've been covering.
No, we're allowed to be cheerful. Cheerful is good. Cheerful keeps us sane. And apparently saying the word cheerful twice in a row means I spit on my monitor. So,
Yuck.
Carry on.
Okay, well, we just, we hope everyone is doing well. We hope that you've enjoyed the series so far and that you are also starting to notice a little nudge here and a little nudge there and starting to see exactly how we're manipulated and, more importantly, why and by whom. So we're going to delve into the real...
I'm going to cut to the chase. We're going to get to the meat now.
I was just about to say that.
Well, tough luck. You were taking too long to get there. I'm excited. I'm ready to go. This is what we've been waiting for.
Jordan's excited like a child, as you can hear. So, yes, I was just about to say we're going to get to the meat of what it all means on this episode. We're going to cover the reason why we're all here, which is MINDSPACE. What is it? Well, let's find out. I'm going to read out a small paragraph and then we're going to talk about MINDSPACE. So I'll begin with this. We outline 9 robust influences on human behaviour and change. These principles are underpinned by considerable research from the fields of social psychology and behavioural economics. They are therefore presented as the most robust effects that policymakers should understand and, if appropriate, use. The following sections briefly explain these effects, which have been arranged according to the acronym MINDSPACE. Before we go into them, Jordan, we've worked out MINDSPACE is a bit of a nonsense acronym. They literally needed some words. And, well, let's...
There's a couple of words in space which really don't have terribly much to do with anything.
Exactly.
They're just filler.
But yes, but the meanings are important, even if the words are a bit nonsensical for the points. Anyway, so let's start with messenger. So according to these nudge experts, a messenger is used for when we are heavily influenced by who communicates information. So the messenger is important, are they, Jordan?
Extremely. They actually slip up later on in this document and they say, I'm paraphrasing because I don't have the quote right in front of me, but they say something along the lines of, it is important that the messenger is not seen to be somebody from government, which pretty much explains their incredible reliance on outside scientists at the moment, as well as celebrities. The number of celebrities giving health advice at the moment is absolutely incredible. Who was that celebrity a couple of, years ago, I suppose, at this stage? Was it Gwyneth Paltrow? She was in trouble for giving people health advice, and her advice was basically like, rub a crystal on your head and all is good.
Yeah, she brought out some kind of... She set up a business or something, didn't she?
Yeah, I vaguely remember this. It's just amusing, the change in tone. We've gone from, celebrities shouldn't be giving health advice to, let's look at the latest celebrity telling us what we should be doing.
Well, this is unfortunately why good, decent, sane, sensible people are being lectured by sports commentators and TV and film stars and just people who are famous for nothing particularly important, but they have a platform and a following, and therefore these people are substitutes, I suppose, for the government to promote the message. Yeah.
It's just really interesting that this document actually says that. Normally, we all know this happens. This isn't news to anybody. It's just really strange that they've actually put it into writing. They don't normally do that. Normally they just pretend that they're not doing it at all. And just magically, all these celebrities and newsreaders and various other people out there, they all just happen to share the same opinion, and it's coincidental.
It's also quite telling, isn't it, that this is what your government thinks of you, that you can be so easily swayed by someone who happened to appear in a film that you liked or played a character that you liked or wrote a book that you liked, or made a song that you liked, or was in a band that you liked, or plays for a team that you like. That these people with no previous training, although God knows why they're choosing like Tony Blair and Bill Gates, then that's a bit of a I don't know.
I don't think they count as messengers. I think they're something else. I think they're the puppet masters.
I would say that they're the anti-messengers.
In some regards, I think they may be.
And we've said this before, because we're genuinely puzzled as to why anyone would trot out opinions of Tony Blair, because surely whatever Tony Blair suggests is a good thing. Everyone would do the opposite just by default. I can't think of a single person that I know who says, oh, Bill Gates, that non-scientifically accredited guy who's making vaccines, definitely going to listen to him. But yes, people... I guess some people, their ego is too big for their body and they just cannot keep out of it. They cannot keep their mouth shut. But generally, when we're talking about messenger in this particular context, we're talking about people who are perceived to be beloved by the general public. Influencers, if you will. So, yeah. Heavily influenced by who communicates information. And it's true to say, I think, that unfortunately, the messenger is more important than the message.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
And that's really a stain on our society that that's the case. Because the message itself should always be more important than anyone delivering it. The message should either make sense or it should be dismissed, regardless of who the messenger is. But I think it comes down to this kind of elevated sense of trust, because you see someone on your screens all the time. You feel like you know them and trust them. Do you remember, I'm not going to go into this in great detail, but do you remember the outpouring of grief when Princess Diana died?
Vaguely, I was a child.
People were literally throwing themselves to the ground like they knew her. Michael Jackson's another one. Like they knew these people. Like these people actually cared about this one person named Beryl or something. That never met these people, but the outpouring of grief was amazing. Mm-hmm. The world has lost such a great talent or such a great person. How do you know? You don't know anything about this person, except, what they showed the public. But again, the messenger. The influence that these people have on us is so far beyond what is appropriate. And that needs to change as well.
But that kind of gets into the next part, which is incentives.
Yes.
Our response to incentives are shaped by predictable mental shortcuts, such as strongly avoiding loss. I would also say that one of those things, even though it isn't really an incentive, this is one of those prime examples. They've chosen a word and they've kind of made the reasoning fit around it, even though that's not really what they mean. In this example, one of those little mental shortcuts we're taking is exactly what you just said. We see these people on the telly, we kind of trust them. And then when we see multiple of these people, we see all of these people say all the same thing, we just take the mental shortcut and say, okay, all of these people can't be wrong. They're not all in on it. There's no secret club they get into. There's no funny handshake between these people. Thereby, they must actually be speaking the truth. Exactly. They're not all being... We've all heard this sort of argument from family members. They're not all in on this together. This conspiracy is too big and all the rest of that jazz. It's the mental shortcut that we take. So we just naturally assume that these people are telling the truth, purely because there's too many of them otherwise.
Well, we ignore the fact, though, that they've all been approached by the government. They're all being paid to say what they're saying. How many celebrities promote or endorse a product that they don't even use?
Well, why is anybody taking a BBC commentator or pundit or newsreader or anything of that capacity? Why is anybody taking what that person says as the truth? They work for the government. There's no getting around that fact. They work for the government. They know if they mess up, if they step out of line, they will no longer be allowed to work at the BBC. The BBC, very highly paid, more importantly, though, comes with one heck of a pension. You're not going to mess that up. you're going to keep your opinions to yourself, especially when you're already in that incredibly toxic environment that is the BBC, and everyone just keeps their mouth shut and gets on with it.
I would also jump to actors. You know, they're being paid to pretend to be someone else and say things that they don't normally agree with.
Yeah.
Why are people constantly surprised when actors turn out to be a letdown or a disappointment, or to sell out? They call it selling out, you know, when they promote a product that's anti something you believe in. They're actors, for goodness sake. That's what they do. That's their job.
They're paid liars, effectively.
Well, arguably you could put politicians in that bracket too, and the media. But they are paid to.
At least actors are likeable.
Yes, some of them. But the media and politicians as well. They are paid to present information in such a way as to suit the convenience of the time. None of these people are paid to give you the truth. And even when it seems like some of them are telling the truth or standing up for you, they're not. It's all a performance. Or they may genuinely do it for that one issue. Doesn't mean they're your friend, doesn't mean they're on your side, doesn't mean they're fighting for you. People are invariably out for themselves. It's only the people with no power who, I would argue, are genuinely fighting to better things for everyone. And even then, not in every case, but still. But incentives, yes, coming up, I went back to the messenger there, so sorry about that. Incentives, our responses are shaped by predictable mental shortcuts. Yes, avoiding loss, of course. We saw that You're Killing Grandma thing, didn't we? Throughout the last year. Avoiding losses. The trouble is we focus so much on the losses that we haven't experienced that we started to experience others. So what was the incentive? Well, the incentive was to go along with this nonsense for a short period of time to avoid losses that you probably would never have experienced anyway. But I do agree that we do want to avoid losses. I mean, that's survival, right? It's to try to avoid losses at all times. Anyway, so that's incentives. Norms. We are strongly influenced by what others do. What do you think of norms?
Norms is pretty much what we were just talking about. The mind part of this really gels well together, and every aspect of it plays into another aspect of it. So norms, we're strongly influenced by what others do. That's the celebrity thing once again. It's seeing everybody in our own lives doing stuff like standing 2 yards back. It's those little things.
Or like the clap for carers.
Yeah, exactly. Just getting everybody to clap for carers. That all of that, everything that we've seen there is a norm.
I would go so far as to say, though, this wasn't suggested behaviour. I mean, there were people actually verbally attacking other people for not engaging in this particular norm, shaming people for not doing it, even though people had legitimate and personal reasons for not engaging, which was, I think, despicable behaviour. And this wasn't the government or some kind of Big Brother type department doing this. This was people's neighbours and friends and family members. It really does come to something, I suppose, when the government doesn't have to police its population anymore because we're doing the job for them. Very sad.
In a way, I know it's kind of skipping ahead a little bit, and I don't mean to. We get back on track properly, but that kind of comes under commitments in a way. We seek to be consistent with our public promises and reciprocate acts. That clap for carers thing kind of comes under that umbrella.
Well, that reciprocation was the general theme of that was the NHS have sacrificed so much for us, the least we can do is clap. In fact, they pulled the same thing, didn't they, with the pay rise, 12.5%. pay rise that they were demanding. People who were supporting the NHS with their threats of protest were saying they've sacrificed so much, the least we can do is fight for them to have a pay rise. I don't know. I don't know if that's reciprocal. For every person who thinks that there are heroes in a particular area, there is someone who is mightily annoyed that they couldn't access a basic service that they pay for. So this really is all about perception. So reciprocate acts works both ways. If you think someone has done something good, you might want to return the favour. But by the same token, if you think someone has done something bad, or is at least unworthy, you may show that you're more willing to push in that direction because you don't think someone has maybe earned it. And yes, this does definitely work both ways. And it will have caused a lot of resentment, I think, especially for those with friends, I would imagine, in working in the NHS at the time, or family members, where one person couldn't get access for some much needed emergency help and the other one's demanding a pay rise. I can imagine those conversations not ending very well. But then I suppose this really does come down to personal perception. Do you think you've been misled or mistreated? Do you think people deserve what they get, good or bad? Yeah. It's a difficult one, isn't it? Because there's too much external influence. We can't just have opinions anymore and just share those opinions within our own circle. Everything is so very public. But of course it's by design. Otherwise things like MINDSPACE wouldn't work.
Indeed. And getting back on track. I dragged us off there, that was my bad. It struck me how they kind of interplayed. The next one is defaults. We go with the flow of preset options.
Now this is an interesting one because we've already covered this to some degree. We've discussed this on the show as well. Mm-hmm. Preset options, I would say we're generally quite lazy. Not because we're lazy, but because we're busy.
Yeah, because we have stuff to do. And it's just so much easier if we just don't have to think about certain things and we can just get on with our day, get away from that as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
The examples they give for defaults throughout this document are quite innocent. Eventually they went on to become something slightly less innocent, such as automatically enrolling everybody on the organ transplant list.
Yeah, well, that was one I was going to mention, actually, because when I say lazy, I mean busy. By automatically enrolling you into things, and that's just one example, there may be many more in the future, it means you have to go to the trouble of unenrolling. Mm-hmm. Or deregistering, or whatever you want to call. In fact, it's the same with schools, you could argue. Once you register a child into one school, they're automatically registered all the way up until they leave. And then, of course, it requires effort to deregister or unenroll. By having this auto-enrolment, same with pensions, by having this automatic enrolment, you cannot just sit there and nothing will happen. Now, if you sit there, something will happen. You have to stop something from happening rather than doing nothing and letting something happen or making something happen. This is quite clever, the way they've done this. Because what it means is they will get the outcome they want because they know that most people will not do it, will not do anything. They'll just let it happen. Another good example of this is when you sign up for a free trial of anything. I know we've all been caught out by these. Well,
yes.
I can't speak for everyone, but I imagine many of us have.
I definitely. This is actually how I started paying for Prime.
Right.
I signed up to Prime for the 30-day free trial because I needed to order one thing. That was good enough for me. And I then spent the next 4 months paying for it without realising.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, they give you a quick notification on the day you sign up. They tell you, they don't lie, They tell you that you will be billed at such and such an amount every whatever date is the date, the rolling date for your payment. They let you know that you can cancel your free trial at the end of the trial period, and that's it. They don't. If it wasn't an auto enrollment, they'd send you a reminder, guaranteed at the end of that trial, to remind you that if you sign up for another month, that there might be some kind of discount, or look at all the benefits you get if you pay for this. But because it's auto enrollment, there is no other reminder. There's just, you sign up for the freebie, and if you don't cancel it, you get stuck with paying for it. And it's a very clever manipulation in a way, because you can't even say, "Oh, I forgot, this isn't fair." Their argument would be, "Well, then don't accept the free trial." It's an actual incentive for something that you might just want to literally try out. As Jordan said, you might want to get something delivered just once. But they're relying on the fact that you will forget, or that you just can't be bothered. I'll do it tomorrow, right? And before you know it, it's been 9 days, and you're now into the payment cycle of it. And even with the payment cycles, I think you have to give 30 days notice, or you get billed for the next period. So yeah, it's very clever.
In terms of what we're facing at the moment, I'm not sure if this counts as a default in the true sense of the word, but it kind of does. When it says we go with the flow of preset options, at this moment in time, we're faced with the preset option of put a mask on and go to the shop. Don't put a mask on and go to the shop and expect some sort of conflict, which most people don't want. Or don't go to the shop and just buy it online. I think they've kind of positioned things at the moment whereby just buying stuff online is the default option. What do you reckon?
I think for many people, wearing a mask, or rather not wearing one, it's a matter of principle. So I think that buying things online is probably a default for most people now, in order to avoid, as you say, that conflict, and avoid being, or the risk that somebody, because again, it's not just shopkeepers, it's other members of the public who might try and shame you. The thing is, though, for us to have these defaults, society must adopt them. And that's a failing on our part, that so much of society adopted these defaults.
But even though it's a failure on our part, they've obviously studied this. They know exactly what they're doing. At the end of the day, we can't really criticise people for being tricked into something. They've got some incredible minds sitting there trying to work out ways to manipulate us to do exactly what they want us to do. And they've spent years, ironically, priming us to get ready for it.
Well, they were priming us with all those videos out of Wuhan, weren't they?
Indeed, they were.
What was coming, and that was a very extreme visual representation of what COVID was. So yes, I imagine by the time COVID hit our shores, a lot of people were in a deep state of panic.
It's kind of ironic. We spent about half hour sitting there before recording this trying to work out what would really count as priming. Because you're right in that the examples that they give for priming is not really what the word means. And you can see it all around you, but it isn't how they've described it at all. But what you've just said there is exactly that. It is priming us. It is people just dropping dead in China in the middle of the street. It is videos like that.
Yeah, and people walking around in hazmat suits. It was incredibly powerful imagery. Long before COVID made it to our shores, and the whole world was watching. Jaws to the floor, unable to believe what they were seeing. So that was a fantastically successful priming. If you want to go down that road.
The next is salience. our attention is drawn to what is novel and seems relevant to us. This is one that I really, really struggled with. In a way, this is where the filler starts. It doesn't really fit in, as it were. What do you think?
I can think of a few examples of salience, or at least a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
What is novel, not so much. What seems relevant to us, very much so. I've noticed since we started talking about the nudge unit, other people have.
Yes,
And
definitely.
I wouldn't have noticed it had it not been a focus for us.
Mm-hmm. I must admit, I wouldn't have been able to see as many of their nudges as I have been picking up recently if it weren't for knowing about them in the first place. So that kind of, in a weird way, it kind of backfired on them a bit.
Yes. But I suppose you could take... I'm trying to think of, in relation to the sort of tyrannical government, things that seem relevant to us. Well, they do try to personalise the restrictions. They've split us into age groups and sex, and they've split the 4 nations up. There are different rules in different nations now. But I'm thinking more from a consumer aspect, because I think most people will have been affected by this. And you see this in advertising all the time. If you start looking for something on, I know, name that website, Argos, Amazon, whatever. I don't want to really give these ones a shout out, but it's just a fact of life. You have targeted advertising. And it will be, so say you've looked up, I don't know, like a food blender. You'll start seeing adverts for food blenders on every other website you go to if you've got this targeted advertising. By the same token, let's say you're going shopping for, and I've mentioned this before, actually talking on the Discord, when I was getting married, I went shopping down Walthamstow Market, and it seems like every advert, every billboard I saw was for wedding dresses. Now, they weren't there especially for me on that particular day. I noticed them, though, because it was relevant to what I was shopping for. So I would say that your attention is drawn to what is relevant to you, or what seems relevant to you. I don't know about what is novel, because novel just means new. Or, you know, it means a book, but we're not going to go, we're not going to be that pedantic. It just means new, different, unusual.
Yeah, this is what I said, the salience bit doesn't... I can't think of any real tangible examples for this. It just kind of... It fits into their acronym, and that's good enough.
Yeah, I mean, from a societal perspective, we obviously read the news about things that are new, because they imply changes, in many cases forced changes, that we may not necessarily agree with. But when we're talking about sort of your daily life outside of that, I can't really think why salience would even cover what is novel. Surely the fact that people have had enough of everything that's going on, I don't think they're looking for novel right now. I think they're looking for, I don't even want to say a return to normality, because we weren't living our very best lives before this happened. And maybe something better. Maybe that's just what novel is.
A return back to the past, basically. So here's what we can do. If you've got any ideas on examples for salience in the context that they're using it, leave it in the comments below.
Yes. Or if you've got an article or a video, drop a link.
Yeah, pop in the comments.
Well, if it's relevant to what we're talking about, we may even cover it in a future episode if you'd like us to. Okay, what's the next one? Priming.
The next one's priming. We've kind of gone over this just a little bit.
Our acts are Oh, go on.
Sorry. Priming. Our acts are often influenced by subconscious clues. Okay, we've kind of covered this a little bit, but some of the subconscious clues that we came up with before recording this were things such as the tape on the ground.
In the shops.
Getting people ready at shops, yeah, sorry. Getting people ready for the idea that they need to be standing so far apart, that they can't be up next to each other, and that people are dirty and dangerous, and that's very bad for your health. What were a
untrustworthy.
couple of the other examples we had?
The
You
hand,
rattled off about 6 in a row.
the hand wash stuff.
Oh, the hand wash stuff, there's another one. When you walk straight into some shops, they've got it there ready for you.
Oh, and masks. Masks by the door now as you go in.
Mm-hmm.
That was something I noticed the other day. I tell you what, the mask shelf, you'll be all be pleased to know, was really well stocked. So,
Because everyone's got their little handmade scarf.
well, hardly anyone was wearing a mask. That's my point.
That's even better.
So I don't think anyone was buying them. I understand that, businesses have to do what they have to do. I don't hold them responsible for following guidelines. They want to stay open. They've got employees that they're responsible for and so on. But a little evil part of me hopes they all get stuck with tons of masks and they can't return them. Yet a lot of these
examples of priming is there away from COVID and all of that.
Well, priming is setting you up for something, isn't it?
Yes.
I mean, priming again is, the Wuhan thing. Setting you up for the devastation of this global pandemic by showing you how it's devastated another country. Mm-hmm. Talking about hands, face, space all the time, that's priming. Or beans means Heinz, as we fondly refer to it as. You're going to kill grandma 6 feet apart.
But that's more of an effect than priming.
Yes, but it still gets this idea into your head that you must stay apart.
I suppose a good example of priming when it comes to COVID, and I did specifically say away from COVID, and you dragged us back into it. When you're listening to things like the radio and what have you, and the hosts constantly say in these trying times, and words like that, in times like these, that little phrase that everyone constantly uses, whenever you go onto websites and you buy something and it says there will be delays due to the ongoing difficulties because of COVID-19 and all of that stuff. In a way, that's kind of priming as well, I would say.
The new normal, you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. That's priming.
Don't forget that. Do you know what would be really interesting? Sorry, it's a completely different subject suddenly. To go through one of their documents, one of the Great Reset documents from the World Economic Forums, looking out for MINDSPACE.
I'm sure it's all over it.
I might do that as a side project. See what happens.
But you'll notice a lot of these overlap, so there's no point really going into great detail because many of them we've already covered. Mm-hmm. So we'll jump straight to effect. Our emotional associations can powerfully shape our actions. Again, this comes back to the messenger and incentives, and again, loads of it's covered. Emotional associations.
Well, the prime example here is you're killing grandma, sort of thing.
Yes.
Don't go around your grandkids, you're going to give them the illness, or don't go around your grandparents, you're going to kill them, that sort of thing.
Yes, you're putting the people you love at risk. All the people you love are the messengers. And therefore, maybe you don't feel that you can say to them, I don't agree with, your position on this, that, or the other. Or I don't think you should do this, or I think you should do that. Because it's someone you care about. Whereas you may have, to someone that you don't care about, you may have been a bit more willing to defend your position. Or vice versa, actually.
A little bit sharper.
Maybe. Or maybe you would fight more for people you care about. But it's true that our actions are shaped by an emotional association. That's absolutely true. Emotions drive everything we do. So, again, that's a bit of a no-brainer. But as we said at the start, this acronym, I feel like they've got a lot of filler in here for essentially just 2 or 3 basic premises.
Yeah, ultimately, this document, MINDSPACE, even though messenger is the first word, we worked out that the main goal of this is actually priming.
Yes.
And then it is messenger, norms, defaults. Everything else is basically filler.
Yes.
It simply doesn't matter, really. Like, effects. There's not much to say on it. It's common sense.
Yes.
The
Same with...
Sorry.
Go on.
No, by all means.
No, go on.
I was just going to say the commitments thing coming up. In many ways, it doesn't really say anything. Basically, we like to save face. We seek to be consistent with our public promises and reciprocate acts.
Like with the clapping. Again, this is just another doubling down of another part of the acronym. It's doing what the government does best, isn't it? It's filler. It's a waste of taxpayer money. I imagine they scrambled around for many an hour trying to find something to fill each of these words.
Do you know what must have been awful? They must have thought to themselves at the beginning, right, this document, the word that we're going to use is MINDSPACE. We've got mind down pat. Mind is fine. We've got the P. What the hell are we doing with the rest of the word? Otherwise, we're just going to have mind P, and that sounds awful.
Sounds really wrong, actually. Yeah. And jumping just to the last one, ego. We act in ways that make us feel better about ourselves. Well, of course we do.
Is that not common sense?
It's survival. It's living. It's the difference between surviving and living, I think. Everything we do is geared towards making our lives better, more productive, more healthy, wholesome, happier. I wouldn't call that ego necessarily.
No, not at all.
If they're talking about from a psychological point of view, you've got superego, I suppose, which is more of a selfish aspect.
Which is how they mean it.
But if they're talking about selfishness, you can bring this back to the virtue signalling you see everywhere. Not content with basically selling your own soul for a few likes online, a lot of people will go a step further and berate and belittle others who don't do the same. But again, that could be covered by a couple of other things there, like norms, salience, messenger. This desperate need that people have to make everyone just conform and behave the same. And this is not just government stooges, this is just your average person. Mm-hmm. And I truly believe that the ego aspect is also a fact that conforming, having everyone behave the same, also makes us feel better about ourselves, that we've somehow made the right choice and that we're doing the right thing. But I will say, though, that those choices to be completely, truly right must come from a place of genuine choice where people are free to make that choice, not where they are hounded into it.
Coerced.
Or shamed, yes.
That's what I hate the most about this document. We've seen examples of it in previous sections, and we're going to see more examples coming up. The way that they give you two choices, but they weight it so heavily towards one, it's plainly obvious that if you select the second option, these people think you're an idiot. And these people will go out of their way to make it hard to select the second option. Even if it's good for you, even if it's what you want, they've decided it's bad for you. They've then decided to make it harder for you.
Exactly. It's like posing a question, what's your favourite fruit, apple or banana? Let's see how many people have chosen banana. You've already mentioned one word twice as often as another. You've already put a bias in people's minds. Or you might say, I'm just about to eat, you might sit there and eat a banana while people are filling out the form. These things are primers, and these things have an effect on you. All of this stuff is designed to give you the illusion of choice, just like voting and everything else government does. It's always an illusion of choice. If we had any real power, any real authority here, we would be able to demand these people step up or step down. And there's no chance of that.
Well, preferably down.
Well,
far, far, far down.
Ideally down. But if you can't get rid of them, at least somehow force them to do the jobs that they're taking quite a lot of money from us to do. Mm-hmm. But we don't have any power, and the sooner we realise that, the better. And what does that mean? Well, it doesn't mean there's nothing else. But if we stop focusing all of our attention, if we stop wishing and hoping for these people to start doing the right thing, maybe we can start doing what's best for ourselves. Or we can keep waiting for someone else to step up who never will. And they love it that we're wasting all that time, don't they?
Indeed they do. Anyway, that is MINDSPACE covered, unless you wanted to pick apart another section.
No, I think that will do for now. We've got a more in-depth discussion on all of these points, based on the report. So we're going to give you their idea of what these things are. Some of the examples are ridiculous. But again, we'd really like you all to think about examples you've seen in real life, examples you've seen in news stories, in articles, in advertising.
Start having a game of it. Start trying to work these things out. That's what we're going to start doing.
Yes, like mind-placed bingo. Let's see how many of these things you can find. Game. Yeah, well, it's kind of fun in a way, because, and it can be fun.
You're defeated.
Yeah.
You're defeating them. Every time you see it, you've understood the game. You've understood the rules to the game, and you've defeated them.
And let's remember, they've only been winning for so long because the only people who knew the rules were them.
Exactly. Well, when it comes to things like the messenger, we've always had a problem with various celebrities and what have you standing up for stupid bloody causes that have nothing to do with them. We've always had an issue with people like Greta Thunberg and whatever else. Now we actually know why. Like, why they exist, why they're there, why they're doing it. Now we understand that. We can actually combat it a little bit better. It's one of those things, as soon as you see it, there's no unseeing it.
Well, there's that old saying that it's easier to fool people than to convince them they've been fooled.
Exactly.
But if you can prime yourselves beforehand so that you don't get fooled in the first place, and you can start to recognise these tricks that these people use, think about how much that will empower you. Just to say that you've sussed out their game and you now know what they're doing. And you can call it a game. And you can win. And it's a tiny little aspect of the harm that's being done to us. But this is an essential tool in their toolkit. They totally believe in this. Just imagine how good it's going to feel for us to start dismissing this and for them to realise that we are doing that. That they've spent years and probably millions of pounds researching, developing and experimenting with this. And suddenly everyone starts saying, no, we're not playing that game anymore. I see what you're doing there. You're using a prime. You're priming me. It's just an amazing feeling of empowerment. We've got to take our power back. And this is a way we can start.
Indeed it is.
Excuse me. So yes, there you go. That is MINDSPACE.
That's MINDSPACE. That is what all of this is about.
So there is your introduction to a bit of an overview of MINDSPACE, quite a brief one. We'll go into it in more detail on the next episode. As always, we will see you tomorrow night at 7:30 for the ward meeting. We hope you can be there. It's always great to do the community streams and have a chat with you directly. Mm-hmm. And we look forward to it very much. So I think for us for tonight, that's it.
Indeed it is. We'll see you tomorrow.
Take care, everyone. Bye for now.
Bye. Bye for now.